Hi and welcome to our fourth session online in the intermediate class of chess. Today I want to talk about the man who you can see on your screen. That man is Bobby Fischer. Bobby Fischer is perhaps one of the most famous chess players of all time. Bobby Fischer was a world champion from 1972 to 1975. In fact, only 3 years he was world champion. But what we tend to think is the way he became world champion, which was the most amazing destruction of all the best players in the world on his path from getting to the world championship to winning the world championship. You see, Fischer just didn't win games. He absolutely annihilated his opponent. He destroyed them. Okay? So it didn't matter who he was playing. Fischer was absolutely devoted to the game of chess, and he worked harder than anybody else to become the #1 player in the world. Bobby Fischer started chess when he was only about 5 or 6 years old. He learnt the game with his sister. They learnt the game together, but soon his sister stopped playing chess. The rest of his family didn't play chess. And just like a lot of kids, I was one of those kids as well. We had like a whole group. We have a whole group of people through the history of chess who learned to play chess and then suddenly didn't have anyone to play with. Bobby Fischer was living in a really, really big city in America called New York. And he managed to find himself a chess club where he could meet other people who play chess as well. So he just learned to play chess by playing lots and lots and lots of chess. So maybe that's the first thing we can learn from Bobby Fischer. The other thing is that he just couldn't get enough of it. He found a chess book and he studied it. Apparently studied it like loads and loads of times. All right, until he found another chess book. If somebody tried to teach him, he'd listen very, very carefully, and then he'd try and put all those new ideas into action. Fischer, when he was like really, really young, showed a really, really big promise. Bobby Fischer, even as a kid, was the most amazing of players. Here, he's only about 13 years old. And when he was 13, he came up with like one of the most amazing games in the history of the game of chess. Bobby Fischer could prove that even by the time he was 15, okay, he was able to compete with grandmasters, and he became a grandmaster at the age of 15. At the time, he was the youngest grandmaster in the history of chess. He won the American Championships, the championship of the whole country of America. America was one of the top 5 countries in the world at the time, and he won it when he was only 15 years old. He won it 8 times. In 1963, he won it with a perfect 11 out of 11. He beat everyone, all the top players in America who were playing in the tournament, he beat them all. Okay? When he was going up to his world championship in 1972, he just beat players non-stop. He won the qualifying tournament to get through to the next stage of the World Championship, the first stage of the World Championship. He won it by 3.5 points clear of anybody else. All the best players in the world were playing. He won by 3.5 points, which qualified him to play in a match against another guy, a knockout match, a man called Larsen. He beat Larsen 6-0. And Larsen didn't even get a draw against Fischer. This is when Fischer obviously was a little bit older. Okay, and at this point, Fischer was just absolutely unbeatable. He then beat a guy called Taimanov, beat him 6-0 as well, a top Russian grandmaster. And finally, in the very last match of the World Championship qualifying, he beat the ex-world champion Petrosian. He just beat him 9-2, I think, or 9-3. Actually, I can't remember now. 9-3. Petrosian managed to get a win in the first game, but then didn't win any more and just got a couple more draws. Fischer was just absolutely unstoppable. In the final, he played against Boris Spassky in the final in 1972, and he won that match, again, convincingly, by 12.5 points to 7.5 points. Even the second best player in the world, he beat him by 5 clear points. Now look, Fischer, you could study his games. Virtually every game that he played, every tournament game at least, and lots of his friendly games have been published. They've been analyzed and looked at. You could study loads of those games, and you would get yourself an excellent education about chess. Fischer is a great player to follow because he didn't play in one way. He became one of the first players in the history of the game to have what we call a universal style of chess. If you tried to attack him, he was a great defender. If you tried to defend, he was a great attacker. He could play safe moves. He could play crazy moves. He could play endgames brilliantly. He could play the most complicated positions brilliantly. He played the start of the game, the opening, brilliantly. He played it all brilliantly. Some players have been classified or thought of as certain styles of players. So we have great attackers. I showed you one last week, Alexander Alekhine. Fischer was as good at attacking as Alekhine was, but he was better at other parts of the game as well. We have really, really great defenders. So the man I told you about, Mr. Petrosian, the ex-world champion who Fischer beat, was a great defender, but not good enough to beat Fischer, okay, or to stop Fischer. We've had players of all sorts of styles. Fischer could play every style, which has made him, in many people's minds, one of the greatest players of all time. What I'd like to show you today is possibly, well, one of his most famous games. This was the game that really got everybody talking about him. The man who's writing this game is a man called Donald Byrne. Donald Byrne was an adult, an international master, a very, very strong player. Bobby Fischer, Bobby short for Robert James Fischer. Bobby Fischer was a 13-year-old boy, and they were playing a tournament in New York, and this is what happened. We get to this position here, and a very, very famous sequence happened. And I want to talk about this because we can learn quite a lot from it. Looking at famous games and trying to understand what these amazing players did and why they did them can help us to try and improve our game. So here we're going to have Bobby Fischer, one of the best players ever in chess, teaching us a number of different ideas. Okay, now in this game, which became known as the game of the century, because it was just such an epic effort by a 13-year-old to be an adult international master. Okay, it was like a complete shock. We're going to see a number of different parts to this game. The first part is an absolutely incredible sacrifice of material by Robert Fischer. So Bobby, he's going to sacrifice his very, very best piece. But you know what? He's thinking to himself, he managed to think ahead and he managed to work out how to win more points than a queen. So remember, a queen, our best piece, is worth 9 points. If I wanted to win more than 9, I'd have to win, say, a bishop. That's 3, plus a bishop, that's 3. 3 plus 3 is 6, plus a 9, that's another 3, so that's 9. Maybe I'll get a pawn as well, that's 10. That would be more than a queen. Still, the queen's a very, very good piece. The first part of this game is this amazing queen sacrifice. So, get ready. You're going to see Bobby Fischer play an absolutely brilliant finish to this game. First, the queen got attacked. So, black's queen, sitting over on near the edge of the board, up here, gets attacked. White could play bishop takes the rook. Okay? If he did, he might lose his rook. So, he did this move. Bishop attacks the queen, and Bobby Fischer just left his queen there. An absolutely amazing thing to do. Actually, in this position, it wasn't quite so amazing, because he stopped the bishop from taking the queen. In fact, a lot of the moves that Bobby Fischer plays in this game are what we call forcing moves. Moves where our opponent can't do what they really want to do because they're forced to do something by us. In this position, Bobby Fischer did a check. And when we're in check, we've got to get out of check. Okay, we don't get the chance to do the move we want to do. If it was White's move now, without any hesitation, you would take the queen. Bishop takes the queen is just the move you want to do. But of course, if your opponent goes check, you can, I'd love to take that queen, but I can't do it because I've got to get out of check. Okay. Well, there are three ways to get out of check: take, block, and move. You can't take the rook because it's absolutely safe. It's on a safe square. You could block. You could block with the bishop, but then you wouldn't be able to take the queen. You could block with the other bishop, but then you lose your bishop. I guess the bishop could come back this way. Oh no, because the knight and the rook are both attacking it. You could block with the knight. Oh, there. I guess you'd lose your knight then. So Donald Byrne moved his king out of the way. And so Bobby Fischer, you would expect anybody in this position, you'd expect Bobby Fischer as black to move their queen. Their queen is attacked, you've got to get it out the way. But no, he'd planned a long, long way ahead, and he'd seen how he could win more points than his opponent was going to win. Remember, the queen's only worth 9 points. It's a huge amount of points for one piece, but all the other pieces, when we start a game, you start a game with 39 points plus a king. So if I could keep my queen but take every one of your pieces, I would certainly do that. Okay? So this is what happened. Bobby Fischer did the move of the century in the game of the century. In this position, instead of moving his queen out the way, he did a counter attack. He went bishop back to here, which basically says, well, if you take me, which of course most people would do, why would you not take the queen? And then I'm going to take your bishop with check. So let's just make a little bit of a count for this. Bobby Fischer just won 3 points, but he's lost 9. Okay? He's also worked out that he could get this rook. That would be 3 plus 5. That would be 8 points. Hey, you can take the bishop as well. 8. That would be 11 points. Bobby Fischer had also worked out he could take this pawn as well. And that will be 12 points for a queen. Let's see just how he did it. So he's going to try and win. We'll just go back 1 second. He's lost the queen, but he'd really like to win 3, 6, 7, 12 points. Remember, he's lost 9. He's going to try and win all 4 of those pieces to get more than a queen's worth back again. So he goes, takes, check. The king moves out of the way. He then, let's see, which one's he going to get next out of these 3? Well, this one. And that will also open this bishop up. So he goes, check. The king has to come back again. And now when he moves his knight, the bishop's going to be giving check. So he can take this pawn, and the rook can't take him back again, because it's check again. A discovered check. A very, very, very smart move indeed. Check. The king has to move again. And now he's won 4 points. He still wants to try and win this. That will be 9. And this, that would be another 3, so that will be 12, and he would have lost his queen. So let's see. First, his knight does this little jump back in again and out, so it's attacking the rook. So he goes check. And remember the bishop on c4. It wants to give check if the knight moves out of the way. So the knight jumps back to here, and now you can see the knight's aiming straight at the rook. See this pawn that was here? I told you the bishop is protecting the knight. Here we go. King moves out of the way, and Bobby Fischer takes one of these 2 pieces. Now, I wonder if you can work out which one he's going to take first. Is he going to take the rook, which is worth 5, or is he going to take the bishop that's worth 3? What do you think? The rook that's worth 5, or the bishop that's worth 3? What are we going to be taking, do you think, in this position? The rook that's worth 5, or the bishop that's worth the rook? Okay, if we take the rook, it's a good idea. You get more points. This guy will run away. You can take him afterwards, but he's going to get taken back again. So you're not winning the bishop and the rook for nothing. You end up losing your knight. Let's try taking the bishop first and see what the difference is. Take the bishop, and now if the rook moves out of the way, oh, look at this rook. When the pawn moved to take the bishop, it let the rook come down and get the queen. So by taking the bishop first in this position, we make a new threat. We threaten to take our opponent's queen. They can't take our knight because our bishop's protecting it. So the queen's got to move out of the way, a bit like when we kept doing check to the king. It had to move out of the way. So Bobby Fischer's using this same trick of aiming at his opponent's best pieces. The queen does move out of the way, and now surely we can take the rook. We take the rook, but then we're going to lose our bishop. Bobby Fischer had it all under control. He protected his bishop. Look at this amazing position. The rook is protected by the knight. The bishop is protected by the rook. The knight is protected by the bishop. And they all protect each other. That must have been a pretty frustrating position for Mr. Donald Byrne. Playing against a 13-year-old kid, this guy, he must have been thinking, what's going on? Why is he playing so well? Little did he know that he's playing a future world champion and a young boy who in 2 years' time would be the champion of his country. He moved the queen out of the way and took a pawn, but lost his rook. And now, not only is he way down in points, he's also way down in development. Remember our golden rules? We've got to attack the center of the board. Well, there's no pawns there, but you can see that Bobby Fischer's pieces are all aiming at the center. This one's aiming through here. This one's aiming through there. The bishop's next door to the center. If the bishop moved out the way, even the rook would be cutting across the center. The knight's got to the far end and probably needs to go back again. But White's pieces, this one's excuse me, this one's stuck. So he's got to try and get it out somehow. And his king won't be safe while the back is this open. So Donald Byrne decides he'll give up another pawn to get his king into the game. So Bobby Fischer takes it. King comes in, and now he's aiming at the knight. But of course the knight takes another pawn. And now we get to the next stage of the game. And actually it's my favorite bit of the game. Okay? I've seen this game lots and lots of times before. This particular part of the game I absolutely like. I love this part of the game. Okay? Donald Byrne trades off a rook, and he's hoping that by this rook coming down and trading, it's going to leave Black's king a little bit unsafe. So perhaps this queen can come in and do huge damage at the back, because a queen is an amazing piece. A queen is the sort of piece that can really, it can absolutely destroy an opponent. Okay, it's so powerful. So what Bobby Fischer does for the rest of this game, little check, is he comes up with the most amazing plan. He decides that what he needs to do is make sure that every one of his pieces is protected. And if that's the case, the queen, because it's the biggest piece on the board, won't be able to take any of them. The queen, if it trades itself for any one piece, will be losing loads. Even if it traded itself for the rook, he's going to lose loads of points. The queen's only powerful if it can win loads of points. So Bobby Fischer makes sure that everything's protected. Look at the way he does it. First, he moves his bishop back so it's protected by the pawn. He then moves his knight back so it's protected by the bishop. His pawn's attacked, he moves it out the way. And finally, the bishop can't move at the present moment because of this very annoying pin that Donald Byrne's done. So this bishop is under a little bit of pressure. he moves his king out of the way. Now just look at this position. It's a position, as I say, my favorite position in the whole game. If we look at all of black's pieces, we'll see that the queen can't take any. The rook, protected by the bishop. The pawn is protected by a pawn. That pawn's protected by the bishop. The bishop's protected by the pawn. The knight's protected by the bishop. This pawn's protected by the bishop and the king. That bishop is protected by the king. The pawn's protected by the pawn. And this pawn's protected by that pawn. The queen can't take anything. The only thing that's not protected is a king. And you're not allowed to take a king. So, Bobby Fischer has just played the most amazing second part to this game. Which brings us to the last part, many people's favorite part of this game. Now, you're going to see the king, the white king, get completely trapped, and an absolutely excellent checkmate to finish this game off. Bobby Fischer wants this king to go into a corner. He doesn't mind which corner. He doesn't mind if it's this corner or if it's over in this corner, because then his 4 pieces, 3, 6, 9, 14 points worth of pieces are going to work all together to checkmate that king. In the meantime, white's pieces, the queen, she's at the wrong end of the board. She can't do anything to help. The knight's in an excellent position. It's right in the center of the board, but one knight by itself is not going to be helping very much. This is what happened. Bobby Fischer saw a forcing line. He just thought, I can go check, 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 check. Well, maybe not that many. And checkmate. So he started with a check. And we're just going to see check after check after check until the poor white king is driven across the board and it's checkmate. So his first check, the piece that's doing the least, the bishop at the top here, bang, down it comes. Look at these bishops next door to each other. Wow, when you put bishops next door to each other near the center of the board, they are absolutely amazing. They work really, really well together. The king is attacked. He doesn't really want to go into the corner. And he definitely doesn't want to go to this square. If he goes there, and then the bishop's just going to drop back again, where it's doing a very, very annoying job of attacking the queen and pinning the knight. So instead, he decides to run his king over to the other side of the board, keeping it in the middle. Okay, it looks like it's going to be safe, but it's not going to be safe at all because it can never get off the back now. He's stopped from going there by this bishop. So all we see is the king driven this way with checks. Every check that happens will force the king 1 square further in this direction. So the first check, we've got to make sure it's safe. So maybe you guys would like to tell me what you think the checks are going to be from now on. So I'll just leave it down to all of you guys. So have you got a check for me? And the other bishop? Well, actually the other bishop, I think the knight might take you. The knight, yes, the knight, but where's the knight going to go? It definitely doesn't want to go here, because then it will block the rook. So g3, yep, absolutely. And the knight comes into this square, and it drives the king over in this direction. And there's another square that the king can't go to. So you see the way the king's being driven in this direction. Okay? And now, the bishop's going to do it. Yes, this rook's never going to move. That's right. Just keep hitting me with the moves. Excellent stuff. And every time you do a check, when the king moves, it leaves the square that it just moved from attacked. Good. So now we're going to be looking at, oh yes, the bishop, great work. The bishop's coming in. and the king's forced to go this way. Look, all the time, all these squares are being cut off from it. So now what are we doing? Actually, maybe I could uncolour some squares because these ones we don't need anymore. Bishop actually didn't move his bishop quite at this point. We want to use all 4 of our pieces. That's right, yep, the knight. Get the knight in, well done. The knight giving check, pushing the king further over. So now the king is completely stuck, and in fact it can't move. Bobby Fischer now came up with a brilliant checkmating pattern. Okay, I remember when I first saw this, I'd never seen this checkmating pattern before, and I just thought, oh, that's just amazing. It started with the knight making one more move to attack the king, which of course allows the king to come back this way. But now you can see the king is completely trapped. The knight is guarding both squares to either side, while the rook is still guarding all the squares there. It's like an A-shaped checkmate. There are 2 different checkmates in this position. 2 different moves that black can do to checkmate white. So can you see either of these checkmates for me? Seeing both of them would be even better. So which one are we going to do? Who wants to hit me with a checkmate first? Bishop. Yep. Bishop over to here is checkmate. Look, the king can't go anywhere. It can't go to either side. It can't go to the squares in front. It's checkmate. We're giving check. The bishop's taken. Bishop can't be taken, sorry. You definitely can't block. These white pieces are at the wrong end of the board. It's checkmate. And the other checkmate, the one that Fischer actually did, he moves his rook right into the middle of the A that we've got. The rook's giving check, and it's protected by the bishop. Okay? And still the king can't go anywhere. So this is the way things finished. The king was basically driven from here all the way across to there, and then had to jump back to this square where it gets checkmated. So look, check, check, check. Use all of your pieces, check. King's gone as far as it's going to go before we pull it back one square and checkmate. The king, once again, can't go to this square or this square because of the knight. Can't take the rook because of the bishop. Can't move to either square because the rook guards those squares. A fantastic checkmate, and one that you might want to try and remember for your games. The more checkmates we can learn, most certainly the better we're going to be playing. This game between Donald Byrne and Bobby Fischer is called the Game of the Century. Actually, it was last century it was played in the 1900s. So it's the Game of the Century for the 1900s, where a 13-year-old boy, Bobby Fischer, was able to beat an experienced adult international master, one of the best players in the country. This boy here, 2 years later, he became the American champion, and he won it 8 times. Not only did he win the American Championship 8 times, he became the world champion in 1972. You could certainly find games by Bobby Fischer and you would learn lots and lots from them because he was an expert at all parts of the game. In this part, he showed that he could play the most brilliant queen sacrifice, making things as complicated for his opponent as possible. He knew the power of forcing moves, checks, to try and win lots of points, knowing that a queen's only worth 9. He then made sure that all of his pieces were defended a great strategy when you don't have a queen, so that your opponent's queen can't take anything. And then in the end, he saw this brilliant checkmate and forced his opponent's king to step over straight into it. An amazing game. Next week, we'll be talking about some other famous players. And next week, we'll be looking at another famous game with more amazing strategies. Thank you very much for attending this. The lesson that I've just shown you will be available online very, very soon. Thank you very, very much again, and I'll talk to you all next week. Thank you.